All right, now let's get analysis. We are now joined via Zoom by energy analyst, Professor Hartmut Winkler. Prof, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Of course, not good news for South Africans. Now, earlier, Eskom moved from level 3 to 4, and not too long after that, moved stages again to stage 6. Talk to us about the meaning of these latest developments at Eskom, especially, given the consequences that South Africans are now faced with to have, power cuts for a longer period, essentially, for stage 6.
Yes, I think what Sikonati Manchacha was referring to in the inset, you'll notice that as compared to a couple of years ago, load shedding was the exception. The way he's speaking is that we should get used to a situation where there will be load shedding much of the time. Not all of the time, but much of the time. And whether we are in stage 1 or whether we are on stage 6 or worse really depends partly on a factor of luck. It just depends on what power station happens to have broken down at any particular time. And unfortunately, we are dealing mostly with old power stations, which are going to just break down a lot, just like old cars break down a lot. But what's really worrying is that this Kusile plant seems to have been responsible for this latest cut. At least this is what he said. Now, Kusile is brand new. Kusile cost the South African taxpayer a lot of money. It shouldn't be causing these sort of issues so early in its lifespan. So, but unfortunately, there's no real alternative. There's nothing else being built at the moment that's going to come online anytime soon, at least nothing major. So, yes, until we overcome this decisively, and that can only happen through a whole lot of new builds, I'm afraid we're stuck in this sort of situation. And unfortunately, we are normalizing this. I think everybody is doing that and adapting, but it's not where we should be.
And I think if we are going to start normalizing it, I think what South Africans want, at the very least, is that we have a consistent schedule. But we're also told that things are expected to get much worse this week, with Eskom also taking down its most reliable energy generator, Koeberg Unit 1. I know you're speaking about Kusile, but Koeberg Unit 1 for maintenance and repairs come Thursday. How bad can things really get from this point on? Are we likely to be plunged into a higher level, a higher stage, stage 8, for example?
That can happen. If it does happen, I don't think it will happen for very long. But if one just looks at what the average has been over the last year or so, and what the average was a year before that or so, you can see it's gradually going down. So it's, as I mentioned, what breaks down at any particular time, we usually cannot tell. So sometimes it's going to get worse, and when it does get worse, it could get down to stage 8. And sometimes it's going to be better, and we're going to be fine for a couple of days or even a couple of weeks. But it's just going to be, one just needs to try not to get it worse than that still. The other thing which is affecting things right now, we probably wouldn't have stage 6 right now if Eskom had money to keep its gas plants going. And unfortunately, they've run out of their budget that they've had for that. And yes, one could ask the government, give them more money. It amounts to something of the order of 10 billion, so that at least they can carry on running those plants until April next year when the new financial year kicks in. But then again, 10 billion is a lot of money that could be used elsewhere. Should we be using it on one of the most expensive forms of generating electricity that we have, or should it be used for something else? So right now, yes, Eskom is looking at its financial situation as well. And I think that is one of the reasons why we're at least at stage 6. But of course, there are these other factors as well.
And the other factors, of course, which probably need long-term solutions, as does, of course, the money factor, is probably more urgent than that. But on a medium to long-term solution, we are talking about, Eskom becoming probably better at project management, as well as making sure that it does have a skilled workforce. Where is it at that point in time in terms of, capacitating its resources from a skills perspective?
Yes, Eskom certainly, while there are still lots of competent people who know what they're doing there, put it that way, if you have a choice to work at Eskom or somewhere else, people would probably go somewhere else simply because it's less stressful right now. There's very little Eskom can also do at the moment other than try and keep these plants from breaking down. Ultimately, it's government's imperative to try and kickstart the process of getting new plants, of getting other means of getting electricity. But whereas Eskom right now can't really do much else than try and save these coal plants from it, because that's where the problems are essentially. It's the coal plants which are breaking down. As far as what's happening at Koeberg right now, Koeberg is on a 40-year license, and in order to get its license renewed in 2024, they have to do some upgrades. So there is a sense of urgency as well. And that's why we're talking about 6 months. Normally a shutdown for refueling, that would be quite a lot shorter than that. Already earlier this year, they were supposed to do that to the other unit at Koeberg, and that ended up being a bit of a mess. In the end, they didn't manage to do that job at all, and that job will now have to happen somewhere in the second half of next year. So there again, that's one stage of load shedding. But yes, tonight, Koeberg gets switched off. So that's one stage of load shedding, but I think they factored this in right now. So that they already know about. I think where the danger would come in if some other coal plants was to start breaking down, then we might get to worse than stage 6. But right now, the Koeberg matter has been factored in anyway.
Prof, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Professor Hartmut Winkler there, of course, South Africans being told to brace themselves, of course, load shedding being ramped to stage 6.